Thank you for coming over and joining us. We're going to get things kicked off in here. And really, this hour is a continuation of sort of where we started this morning. I don't know if all of you are in the room with us this morning and sort of what I talked about a bit this morning. This is really your chance to talk to us and talk to each other about sort of the things that stood out or that resonated for you, and or things that you want to talk about or ask more questions about. So this is really your time. Just as a reminder, we are your power couple of social work this afternoon. I'm Maya Doyle. I'm a pediatric social worker for about 30 years. I've switched to academia in the last 10. So I actually teach in the School of Health Sciences and a medical school. So I am now teaching future healthcare providers how to better work with families, hopefully, and better understand what families are experiencing. So that's my background. I'm going to let Haley tell you a little bit about herself. And then we're going to open up the floor to you guys to kind of go back and talk about the things we started with this morning.
So my name is Haley. I've been to one conference 4 years ago, and it really sparked passion in me with working within this population. And so since then, I went into therapeutic recreation, and my background is in psychiatric clinical social work. So I've done roles from caretaking respite services for individuals with genetic disorders and comorbidities with mental or behavioral health challenges as well. I did therapeutic recreation with same population, and my most recent job has been in various hospital settings, and I'm also an animal assisted therapist.
So cool.
That's me.
And so we're just going to sit and chat and ask for you guys to share things with us. Haley may repeat your questions if we don't catch it on the mic so that we catch all our Zoom folks at home. And I am actually going to pull up our chat for this as well so that I can see if anyone has questions online. So forgive me for having my phone out in the middle of this, but we already have a question actually. Should we start with this question? Let's see. I would like to hear some examples of how Ms. March has helped patients and their families deal with traumas, which affects the patient in their everyday life from a psychological and emotional standpoint, not a physical one. Sorry, reading the question. Go ahead. I mean, I think one of the things is really thinking about how the experiences that you're all having as families, that you're experiencing when your child has medical concerns too, themselves can be traumatic experiences, right? So I think that might be a place to start.
All right. So some examples for individuals within this type of rare genetic disorder population that I have worked with, what I've found to be helpful is going back, even if they've seemingly evolved and had children who are affected by it for several years, going back to the beginning, to that initial diagnosis. And a lot of times for new families, and still with families who've experienced having a child for a long time, I find that most parents are either stuck in either sort of the similar steps to the grief process, with having to accept and embrace the fact that their child has this. And oftentimes it's kind of people's first instinct to be in denial and like, whoa, my child doesn't have this, you know, it's something else, he doesn't have that. So helping people come to terms with understanding the diagnosis and really accepting and embracing that before you can move on and build off of that to address trauma. And my perspective on working with those families with trauma is that trauma for these families is complex. It's not just a single traumatic episode. It's a series of recurrent traumatic effects. And it's also a series for siblings and the other families in the home as well. So I usually separate individual sessions, sibling sessions, and family sessions. And so that everyone can be processed and have their time to deal with their individual concerns and challenges that they're working through at the moment, and recognizing that, all of these complex traumas leave tons of little holes in us, and eventually it's just going to burst. And so it's important for me working with families to start at that beginning from the diagnosis period. Again, embrace the diagnosis, be able to accept it fully, know what it is, be able to create action plans and realistic goals for going forward, and just support individuals on, everyone has different needs and everyone moves throughout the process in their own way. Does that answer your question?
Hopefully that answers our online.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It was an online
That was
question.
an online question. And if I can add a little bit to the trauma piece, since we started off on that topic, I think it's really important. And this came up when we had our 8P meeting 2 years ago, and I talked to a lot of families there. And one particular mom really talked about the symptoms that she was having of what, we classify as post-traumatic stress, sleeplessness and hypervigilance and all of those things, and recognizing when she was able to recognize that that's what was going on, and then get appropriate treatment and support for herself, that enabled her to be a better parent and be able to be a better advocate for her own child. And so to really be aware of, that it's not just, oh, I'm the parent of a special needs child and this goes with the territory, but that, if you are having those things happening, that you deserve and have the right to get your own care and support for that, is really crucial, right? It's not, and I worked with families with kids with kidney disease for years, and their kids would go out to surgery every day, on a regular basis. They were going for procedures and seeing these things over and over again. And I kind of talk about it, but I'd send them on their way to go to these procedures with their kids, right? I wasn't a mom myself at that point. When my son was 3, I had to send him for a hernia surgery. And I sat there and I watched him go under anesthesia for the first time. And he was fine. It was minor. But I was like, oh my God, this is a terribly, terribly frightening experience. And for my parents of chronically ill kids, they're seeing this over and over and over again. And it took a little personal kick in the pants for me to really recognize that, if you're seeing your kids going for medical procedures, having seizures, having these different things going on, right, that is traumatizing to you as a parent. And it is really vital that you're getting care for you and support for you and peer support for you in situations like this, as well as the focus you're putting on your kids.
A few other examples, some of them are listed on here, is education, and being trauma informed is a big part of it. And what I mean, mainly the takeaway from that is meeting families where they're at. Everyone is in a different spot. There's no expectations prior to anyone walking in. Every situation will be so unique, and it is so important to meet someone where they're at, work through the pace with them. And as it says, trying to push them and challenge them moving forward, but at a balanced pace that doesn't feel overwhelming. And another thing is finding a fit. Really, the most important thing, I think, is an example of, and just the basis of helping families deal with processing traumas, is if there's no safety, there's no healing. If these people don't feel they have a strong connection, a therapeutic alliance with you, they don't feel like you have that rapport established, in my opinion, then there's no safety and there's no healing in the room. So that's really important in beginning with anyone working with families.
Yeah, and that's true it could be true of the mental health professional, but it's also true of your healthcare teams, right? And I think we've talked, and even in our session this afternoon, right, we talked about trust and how important that is, to feel like you have a safe space and people you can confide in, and even your medical team to say, hey, something's going on, or we're not coping with this well, we need a little bit more here, is super important. I want to hear from you all, and we can one of us will run out into the audience. What stood out for you this morning of this stuff we talked about, and what sort of brought you to come back? What would you like to talk more about? This is really your time. We are on the camera. We have been adjusted. So we are being
Yes.
recorded.
So in this, in this area is where the camera is set up to be
You guys
recorded.
are welcome to speak
So
forward.
yeah, and if you want, you're welcome to move forward. So if it feels better, and I'm gonna walk out and bring the mic around, so it does feel a little more personable. And again, we are gonna awkwardly repeat the questions for clarifications, so people on Zoom can also hear.
It's all crunched together. It's okay. We'll all be close. But just they can hear us. We can feel your energy virtually.
Yes, and as Maya mentioned, this session is for you guys. So hopefully, it's very interactive and you guys feel comfortable engaging and more as we go on. That is in my one later. Yes.
I wanted to piggyback off what you guys were talking about with trauma and dealing with things, even as I can hear me. Am I loud? Okay. I wanted to piggyback off what you guys were talking about earlier because Logan had heart surgery. And when we had our diagnosis, and then we had the heart surgery first, then we had the diagnosis, but we're at Children's. And I'm doing a puzzle on the floor because it's gonna be 6 hours. Like I'm not gonna deal with this. And he's like, "You're heartless. Like, how can you not care that?" I'm like, "I can't do anything." But he was in a different place than I was emotionally. Like he wanted to be actively talking about it and discussing it. And I'm like, I can't, he's in God's hands. Like I can't do anything to help him. So I felt like we distanced ourselves on that sense. But over time, working through it and working through Logan and coming to terms with where he was at and both of us coming together, it actually strengthened our marriage. But at the beginning, it was very fracturing for Logan, not our marriage, but our marriage after we had Logan. But I don't know. There was a little bit of trauma. We didn't seek help or anything. It was just something that we worked through personally and whatever. But he's fine now. But
Yeah.
And we're fine.
Thank you for sharing. And I think you also bring up a really great point in which not everyone chooses to seek out counseling, and people manage the trauma in the way they see is best for them. So there's typically working with these families, there is no imposing your beliefs or your values. It is whatever feels best for the family in terms of treatment. Anyone else? Yes. We'll go to you and then you.
So I felt after Nora was born, I was really angry for maybe about 2-3 years. And I had a hard time. I don't know. I feel like there's a different support level for dads. We're as men, sometimes we're just kind of taught to grit and bear it and not cry and not engage with our emotions. I remember a friend of mine once making fun of it. It was like, wait, feelings and emotions are different? What do you mean? I had never really had a trauma in my life until she was born. And so it was really difficult for me to engage and understand my own heart. And I did go to counseling, and I did start opening up to my wife and my other guy friends too, and trying to actually talk to them about more things than like, sports or hobbies or whatever. But it's been a process, and it's taught me, that it's okay to go here as a man, and that it's okay to cry. It's okay to do these things, but it's taken a while, and I still struggle with it. And I feel like it's been a big thing in our marriage and for us to overcome, but we're getting there, and it's just been interesting seeing that. So that's, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I think what you said is so appreciated and needed in terms of progressing and lessening that stigma and these gender expectations through stories such as the one you just shared. So thank you for that. And another great point that you raised is that another part with trauma is a lot of parents cope differently move through stages of acceptance differently, and are in different stages of, like I said, kind of the grief process when you find out about a diagnosis. So sometimes it's not necessarily noticed, but there's trauma within having different ways of coping that make it hard to come together and agree on things that cause marital problems. And so then there's compact, you're dealing with this trauma on your own, and now you have the stress that's placed on your marriage. So thank you for bringing that up, and thank you so much again for sharing your experience.
So I think Edward he's much more accepting of this than I am. I think he's very zen. But I do remember when we found out, we've talked about kind of our horror stories with finding out, and we really didn't have a conversation. We got a piece of paper, and the piece of paper, I just clearly remember saying, like, may never walk, may never talk, severe mental retardation. Like, that just sticks out in my brain. So I remember reading it to him over the phone, and I'm crying, and I hear this bang. I'm like, what'd you do? He's like, I put a hole in the wall. And I was like, well, that's not fair. You got to put a hole in the wall. He's like, we have more walls. and that's just, and then you just kind of laugh and go, okay. And every once in a while, even now, like every once in a while, I break. He never breaks, but he's also, he's much more accepting. But I don't know when that stops, where you're like, I'm good. And then I break. And then I'm okay after that. So I don't know if that ever ends.
Yeah, so I think it's always important to highlight that progress, recovery, healing, moving forward is not a linear process. It fluctuates so much, and it's very common for people to feel like, oh my God, I've been doing so well. What happened? And that can cause all sorts of emotions. Again, brought up. So it's so important to recognize that it's not a linear process. Everyone takes the time they take, move back and move forward. And that's normal. So thank you.
So I think just to piggyback on what you were saying, I found, like, especially with Riley, her medical issues are just ongoing. And I feel like sometimes, you just wait for things to get easier. And I mean, with her being 13 now, you'd think you'd be a little more used to it, but I feel like I used to handle things a lot better when she was younger than I do now. Like, if she needs another surgery, I fall apart, and her dad's actually the one that kind of keeps me together. And then, just on another issue too, I think being social with my friends, they all have typical kids, and it's when they ask how Riley's doing, and I'm like, I tell her, and I just see the look of like, I mean, I appreciate sympathy, but for me, it's like, this is just our life, and I don't want to be that Debbie Downer friend all the time that, when they ask about Riley, and I'm like, oh, well, she has this, and this. And then I realize, like, how sad that is, sometimes. But I just, I think that I feel that's kind of what we've lost, is just a lot of connections with my friends that do have typical peer kids. And that's a struggle. And they try, some of them not so much, but, it's been difficult. But again, like, it's an ongoing thing, and knowing that sometimes I'm okay. And Luke and I balance each other out pretty well. If I fall apart, he's usually the strong one, and then, vice versa. So that's been good, but yeah.
Do you feel like you've had any positive moments where you feel like you successfully have reconnected with friends?
Yeah, I do. There's some friends that have made like an effort, like, they want to come and sit and hang out with Riley and learn about her so that they can provide, just respite, just somebody else that knows her that we can trust with her, and a lot of other people. And to be more specific, my best friend and I, we had our plans were always to have our daughters together, and when I got pregnant, I told her and I was like, are you ready to have a baby? And she was just like, shut up, And then she got pregnant a few months later. So her daughter's 6 months younger than Riley is. And, at first it was like when they're young, it was great. And we get together a lot. Our babies were being raised together. And then her daughter started to, outgrow Riley, and you start to do things that your child's not doing. And I think what hurt with her was she just stopped inviting us to things because she knew that Riley couldn't do those things. And I think she did it, more to protect me. But I think just the fact that she doesn't ask anymore is very difficult. But yeah, I mean, I have met a lot of, just through special needs communities. I have a very strong support system through the special needs community, and that's been great. But as far as, friendships that were there kind of pre-Riley, not so much. Yeah.
I'm curious if you want to raise your hand, how many of you in this room have experienced that same feeling of disconnect from friendships? Yeah, so that's something, does anyone want to speak to that? No, all right. Is there anyone else, or are there any online questions left?
There's no questions, but a few comments addressing what you said. You're getting a lot of feedback, which is good. And the comment was to piggyback on what this dad, being you, said. I couldn't agree more that being a parent of a neurodiverse child, a disabled child, forces us to dig deeper into ourselves. It challenges everything we thought we understood, but the journey is worth the pain. So kudos to you. I think it takes a little guts as a guy to talk about that. And I think, to me, that's as strong as any guy could be, is talking about his feelings and emotions, because I knew I wasn't raised to talk about my feelings or emotions. And I think as guys, you're raised to be strong, and, being strong, you don't even pay attention to emotion because it conveys weakness, right? That's how most guys are socialized. So for you to be able to say that in front of this room, I think is a great lesson for every guy in this room, and gives a little insight into the women in this room, that of some of the challenges that us guys go through when it comes to emotion. So good for you. I learned something from you. Thank you.
The other thing that it made me think about too, and again, thank you for sharing the dad perspective. I always get every couple, meeting or two that I go to, I have a dad like you in the room who says, hey, wait a minute. No, I've had to change and learn and do things differently than how I was raised and what I was used to. I think the other thing that I want to acknowledge as someone who's worked in hospital for years is how we tend to approach moms and dads differently. And we shouldn't, and especially in this age where we think so much about, gender and gender identity and all of those things and the assumptions we shouldn't make. I think probably your healthcare professionals probably respond to and have different expectations for what parents should do and what roles you should take. And it's absolutely okay within your household to decide, this is how we're gonna share things, and this is we're going to have to divide things. We don't have to do things in any traditional way, right? That you can sort of carve a new path so that you can balance each other out when you need to, or one can step back and one can step up. So it's so wonderful to sort of hear all these different sort of creative things that couples do. We hear lots of not great statistics, and certainly see some of it, of the stressors, right, that get put on parents and get put on couples when they're caring for a child or children with health conditions. But there's also this amazing strength and lessons that come out of this for couples that then they're really able to turn around and take that back to other folks, right? What does work and where have you gained strength? So I really appreciate those of you that are sharing in this room of sort of what's come to work over time. Do we have other things that people want to share, either based on their couplehood or based on other things that we were talking about this morning? What brought you to the room today? You're thinking stuff. Do you want to share with us? I'm sorry. We'll let you have that for a moment and then share with us, okay? Yeah.
While we're all taking a moment to kind of digest and process, one thing that I picked up on from a lot of families here at the conference and from the question that was asked, and part of the shared stories is humor and how effective humor can be and allowing yourselves to laugh and to connect with others, like in areas like this, where you can laugh about certain things that may feel inappropriate to laugh about with other people. But I think humor is a good way, in my opinion, to try and help process things and deal with challenges in everyday lives. And I think the same is true for taking time to recognize strengths that you all have, because you're all incredibly strong individuals to be here in this moment and have the everyday lives that you do. You all have so much inherent strength in all of you. Is anyone comfortable sharing a coping mechanism or a strength that they've found about themselves?
So watching you.
I'm gonna come and sit.
Yeah. So I feel like, you just have to be strong and brave all the time because everyone needs you. And so, but like, I know this sounds so funny, but it's like knowing that like I want to do as much as I can to help everyone here. And it's like probably a twisted coping mechanism, because then I'm like, okay, I have to get on my computer. And I mean, I think some of you know that about me and you check in on me, and I appreciate that always. But that's the only thing I know how to do. It's like, I'm going to just try to fix this. I have to try to make it better. And I'm going to live in Project AP for the rest of my life, because otherwise I'm going to have to feel and emote. And I don't want to do that, because I feel that that's not, it's kind of like what you said about how men think, right? It's like, well, that's a weakness and that's a waste of my time. And so, but obviously somewhere I'm imploding. And I feel like we say okay, the spouse, the husbands, they're stronger. They don't, but I actually almost am like, I want to hear how you guys feel too. I want to hear, how is this affecting the fathers? Because then maybe there's that camaraderie that's missing, going, oh my God, you're feeling that too, so am I. So I encourage that as much as I can. I'm done crying.
I think there's so many different ways that everybody in this room probably copes with any crisis that hits us, right? And there are times we cope by sort of practically okay, what are the things I can do?
What's in my control?
Right, what's in my control? What can I take action on? And when we can't take action, that's when we get can be really overwhelming, right? Yeah.
I'm going to speak to you, but I'm going to speak to everybody in the room. But I'm going to speak to what you said, because I've worked with you for, I don't know now, a couple of months, right? You are a doer and you do so much, and everybody in this room does so much. And there is part of that control piece. Then Amber, you said something really important. You're like, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good. And then I cry. And I think I'll say this to you personally, but I'm speaking to everybody. You got to give yourself time to cry. I think you can still do. But I think giving yourself that space to cry and however you want to do it is really healthy. You're a punch a hole. Listen, just get a punching bag. What did he punch it off the chain or what?
No, I was in my office. when it got- And again, that's what we were talking about. There's very little information. One of the things I'm very proud of Bina and everybody here contributing is to add that level of information out there. So when people do get diagnosed, they can find something that isn't horrific when you first start looking it up. Because that's what we were stuck with. It was the phone call of Amber crying and saying, they said this, I can't talk. And so then I looked up online. And I said, that's yours. This looks really bad. I don't know what to think about it. That's a positive thing. That initial sort of information that's out there. Start seeing. Very, very positive. All of it.
One thing I will say that's kind of hard, and I don't know if you feel this way, the problem with breaking is you're worried you're not gonna come back together. So you just don't break. Because then if you do, like you still have to get up in the morning and you still have to make food and you still have to take people to school and then you still have to go to work and you do way more than the rest of us. But like the concern is if you break, who's gonna pick up the pieces? Like you kind of can't, there's no time to break. You just gotta function. And maybe that's not healthy, but at the same time, that's life, right? I mean, right, yeah, nobody actually helps. And then you don't want people, no. And do you really want people feeling sorry for you? Because then to your point, like your friends try, but then they don't even know what to do with you. So then they just sort of like, okay, and so you just.
So I have one suggestion is this time for self-care and compassion to help avoid, you go. At some point, there's going to be some compassion fatigue. There's going to be some caregiver burden, maybe not for all of you, but maybe for some of you. And that's why it's so important to be able to allow yourself to start feeling emotions. Maybe you start letting yourself have 2 minutes a day to incorporate mindfulness, where you can slowly start increasing the time and comfortably allowing yourself to feel more and more. And I think as well, you can also use that self-care time just to cry.
I don't want to phrase this in a way that sounds really depressing because I think there's to balance this with good stuff, but something that's been helpful for me is I've really started relating to this as grief, but it's a lifelong grief because it's a grief of the loss of the life and the child you thought you'd have. It's a grief of the friendships you thought you'd have, as you were speaking to, which I really relate to. And I think it doesn't go away. You don't just go and then break down, go. It just, you live with it forever. And there's so many wonderful things that you have as well. Sometimes I look at my daughter and I have these moments of just like, how lucky am I? She's so funny and joyful. And I have like these wonderful moments with her and her hair is so cute. And oh my gosh, I'm so lucky. And then I have these moments of grief where I just grieve the things that I don't have and the things that other people have and I don't, or the things that my daughter doesn't have, or my other children or my family. And I don't know if it was maybe in a conference in New York or somewhere, I don't know where I heard this, but someone once described it to me that helped me as a backpack that we wear. And everybody over time accumulates grief through trauma or experiences that we have. And it's like putting stones in a backpack that we just keep carrying with us. We never get to take it off. And it's heavy and we wear it forever, but we learn how to walk differently and we just adjust. And for me personally, and I don't know if this is helpful for anyone, especially because I'm saying this through gulps of sobs. So, excuse me. Also a new way I've learned to talk through gulps of sobs. But it's just grief. And I listen to tapes on grief, and I find that I can talk to people who have experienced loss in a way that I couldn't before, which is a positive if we're talking about things that we're positive about. I can talk to my friends who've lost parents and who've experienced trauma, and I can look them in the eye and really listen to them and really hear them, and I'm not afraid to talk to them. And a lot of people are afraid to talk about grief, and I'm not. And I'm grateful for that. That's something that I think has helped me, that I've grown from. That was kind of all over the place in my mind. This was a very focused, like powerful speech I was going to make, but basically it was just saying processing it through grief. And I found a community through that and being okay with that. Everyone experiences grief, and it's something you just carry and don't try to fight it. Sorry, that was not a Simone Biles dismount, but you guys get it.
I think you spoke beautifully, and you never have to apologize for crying or your emotions. You know, I think this is a space where, and all spaces should be inclusive of everyone's experiences, emotionals, the way they emote when they speak and reflect on experiences is valid and just. And that's the way you feel. And it's something you should never apologize for. And we're all here to help support each other. So thank you so much for sharing and for your advice.
One thing I was thinking about when you and her were both talking is my husband and I are very different people in the sense that he can not emote, like you were saying. He loves sports. But anyways, the levels where one person breaks is different. So I can go days or months without like getting angry that I'm doing everything. Or he goes 6 hours and he feels like he needs to go out for the weekend. So we're definitely on different levels. He's like, I don't know how you take care of all these kids and Logan and that. And I'm just like, you just do. Like, we did this, so we have to do this now. But I don't know if that's helpful, but he breaks a lot sooner than I do. And it causes a lot of arguments about like, you need to do your fair share, but you know, you need to wake up and get him ready for school. But anyways, I don't know. You kind of have to, someone has to be the one that steps up and does it, because it has to be done. He can't just be neglected, you know? I don't know, but I was thinking about what you were saying, and there's a level where you break, and some of us have different levels. Like Bina's is a lot higher than some of ours, because she can do more. But anyways, that's all I.
And
No, I'm guilty of it because I assume she'll never break, because I just don't even think she'll break, because she wakes up, she's working, she's like on her computer all day. Even during COVID, I'm like, oh, look, we're home now, we can like hang out, I'm working from home. And she's like, no, I'm busy working. So for me, it's like, I would have more free time, but she's so focused. I assume she'll never break. Something, you know,
You never expect her battery to run out.
right. And I feel comforted that, because I feel like, oh, someone's working on this, so I feel good about it, yeah.
no, well, thank you for being honest about that reaction and supporting your lovely spouse. Is in couples therapy. And I think you're a great example of the humor use we were talking about. So I appreciate your humor. Does anyone else have? Yes.
I thought of like several different things as people have talked around, so I'll try to remember them all. The first one is when we first got our diagnosis, like a mentor mom to me who had an 18-year-old-ish with Down syndrome reached out, and she said, you know, this is super raw right now. You're still trying to make sense of a lot of big words, but to give you a realistic picture, being a special needs parent is really a lifetime of chronic grief. It's not as poignant and raw as it is right now. It will wax and wane, but there will always be unkind words from others or new parts of the diagnosis or, you know, whatever. Like you just have to recognize and not fight that when you think, damn it, I've already been sad about this. Why is this sad all over again? So that was really reassuring to me, to not get frustrated when I felt the grief rise up again, that this is just going to be life with Lainey. And it won't always be as hard as it is in one moment, but it will continue for all of her life. So I have learned to make my peace with grief. And when it rolls over me, then I just let it wash over me rather than get frustrated that it's a struggle again. The other thing that I wanted to say, Carmen and I can relate on this, but as the primary caregiver of Lainey, she and her dad have a really sweet and unique relationship, but sometimes it feels like it's kind of clueless, like he's a little bit naive and he doesn't do the hard appointments, he doesn't sit through the hours of therapy. And on one hand, I feel like I want a partner, like someone equally pulling this yoke with me, but then I understand that if I would rob him of the beautiful and innocent relationship he has with his daughter if we both did the exact same thing. So I've also had to come to terms with that if we've agreed that he's going to go out and make money and I'm going to stay home and raise kids, it's going to look different, the loads that we carry. And I have to be okay. I have to find beauty in his relationship with her and not resent him for maybe not putting in the hours. Hold on, I'll pass the two. Oh, go ahead.
Don't you have 5 kids?
4. Yeah. Being his mom. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So Beth made the comment, for people that couldn't hear, that sometimes it feels like then we also have to be the mother to the husband as we educate him in all the things that he missed during the day, which is right. Yeah. It's not a super healthy dynamic for the marriage, for sure. Yeah. I really feel like when a diagnosis is given, it should also come with a list of personal and marriage therapists. That feels like it should be on the docket. Get one and keep one. Yeah, right. But the last thing I wanted to say was, a few years ago, I got my hand on a book called Not What I Expected. It's written by a neuropsychologist who delivers a lot of diagnoses. And it was so healing for my heart. It just put into words so many thoughts and feelings that I'd had that I couldn't really make sense of or verbalize and therefore not really process. But if you're a reader, I would highly recommend it. But one of the things she talks about is how we have a biological wiring to want to pass on things to our children. And when we get a kid like this, it's not really even an option, right? So you grieve all the things. I'm never going to run a triathlon with my daughter. We're never going to make homemade ice cream together or pick out a wedding dress or like all of these things. But like we are wired to want to do that. And so one of the, I don't know if it's exactly a coping strategy, but one of the fullest and happiest times I've felt as a special needs parent is when I can find a way to reinvent something that I always wanted to do with my kids. And so this March, for the first time, my husband and I and all 4 of our kids skied together. Here in Colorado, they have really great adaptive skiing programs, and all 6 of us are flying down the mountain together. She's on a little sled with an instructor, keeping her safe. And my heart was like ready to burst. It was so fun. And it obviously didn't change anything, but in that moment, that one thing was redeemed. That one thing I thought I had to, release. And so I think a coping skill for me and our very active family is doing the best I can to still find ways to live the life that we want to live, even if it looks a little bit different. So anyways.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And in terms of the ski trip, that is so fun and inspiring, I think. And it is so important to, create those moments where you feel like you're doing things as a family and just having joy and taking that time to just be together and present in the moment. And in most states, there are a lot of options for adaptive style trips. In Colorado, Adaptive Adventures, as well as STARS, both provide tons of services, from skiing and kayaking to everything you could think of. Who would like to respond?
I never thought of all that. It's not your turn. Like I was like, okay, yeah, okay, grief, whatever. But like, I'm like, I don't know. Like I wasn't like mocking it in my head, but I was also like, I'm not there. Like I don't feel that. And then she goes, you'll never get a wedding dress. And I was like, well, shoot. You know, like we always said like Logan will live in our basement forever and we'll, you know, watch sports together for the rest of our lives and just do stuff together. And like when we get a trailer and retire, like Logan will live with us. But I never thought of what he's not going to get. So thank you for that. So yeah, that was great.
I greatly admire your humor. All right, so any final responses? Any,
And just a reminder, what we've been saying all day and we'll keep saying, right? We're all around. After this, we have one more session together at 3:45. We're here all night. So please come and keep talking to each other, most importantly, but please come keep talking to us as well about anything that's brewing. And I am proud of this room for being so open about their tears and about what's going on. Thank you for your honesty. You really, that there's no better gift you could give to one another than sort of opening those gates even a little bit, Bina. So please enjoy your next step in your afternoon. Come find us if you would like. Keep putting things online for those of you out in the virtual world. We're thinking of you. And we will talk to you later in the evening.
Hey guys, I just wanted to say thank you to Haley and Maya and Brett, and like love you guys so much. And really, like I feel like all of us can say the same things. I'm like, oh my God, Laura, you were like so wise and everything that you share, and I just want you to share so much more, you know. And the same thing, it's like Allison and Bethany, like completely, like my husband was like, oh my God, that's what Bina says to me all the time. Like, you know, mothering another adult. And yeah, it's amazing. I'm so grateful to have met all of you. And I just hope we can do more of this together before we all leave again. And it's like healing. I just want to give you all big hugs, but thank you. You're great.
and thank all of you. I think, you know, oftentimes we're looked at. Yes. But thank you all. You know, oftentimes it looks like we're the people who are supposed to respond to questions and invoke knowledge. But really, I think we learn so much from all of you that then helps us better work with clients moving forward. So the impact that you have on other people extends greatly beyond this room. So thank you all. And I'm done.